Welcome to the Bud's Beer Blurb podcast. You can catch all of our episodes on Bud's blog site at budsbeerblurb.com. We can be heard on Spotify, Amazon Music, SoundCloud, YouTube, and many other podcast sites. You can also find us on Instagram, Facebook, and TikTok. Just search at Bud's Beer Blurb. Be sure to like and follow us while you're there. Hello everyone, I'm Bud SD, and welcome to episode 11 of Bud's Beer Blurb, the podcast. Wow, what an episode we got for you here. We have Brian Ayers of Elicit Brewing telling us exactly how he became the head brewer of Elicit Brewing. We also have Sean Guerra and Adam Delaura from Labyrinth Brewing, and they're going to tell us their story of how Labyrinth ended up closing. It's a sad story, but one that needs to be told. Plus, we have another edition of Hops 101. All of this coming right up on Bud's Beer Blurb, the podcast. Introducing the all-new Brewmaster's Delight, the beer that's perfect for every occasion. Well, almost every occasion. Here are some times you should definitely enjoy Brewmaster's Delight. When you're celebrating a big win. When you're catching up with old friends. When you're enjoying a sunny day at the beach. When you're at a barbecue and the grill is sizzling. But there are also those times when you should probably avoid drinking, well, any kind of beer. When you're about to give the big presentation at work. And with that, we'll have better profit margins. When you're trying to assemble IKEA furniture. There, it's all done, honey. You thought I needed help. When you're learning how to juggle knives. My foot! Call 911! When you're attempting to impress your in-laws with your cooking skills. And now I'll just add some beer to the recipe. And why would you use beer in a cake batter? When you're about to run a marathon.
Ready, set, go!
Hey! Someone knocked me over!
Remember, Brewmaster's Delight is here to make the good times even better. Just make sure you pick the right times to enjoy it. Brewmaster's Delight. Because life's too short to drink bad beer. But please, drink responsibly. Well, let's start the interviews off with Brian Ayers of Elicit Brewing. Bud from Bud's Beer Blurb, and I am in Manchester, Connecticut at Elicit Brewing, and I am sitting down with the head brewer, Brian Ayers. Brian, thank you for joining us.
I'm super happy to be here.
And I'm super happy to be here because we got a flight of beers in front of us that we'll get to in a moment, but that always makes me smile. So, Brian, tell us a little bit about yourself. Where did you get started in the brewing industry?
So I got started home brewing, where like most people I think around here did, and just on a whim. Back in the day, I owned a gym. I was in fitness, actually came up in exercise science in college and went into the gym side of things and, spent the first half of my career trying to get people to not drink beer and to not have extra calories.
Oh, the hypocrite.
So then I went essentially to the dark side, as we like to say.
Okay.
But it started out actually as a homebrew class with Thad and the boys over at Brew and Wine Hobby in East Hartford. Mm-hmm. Rest in peace to that business as well, unfortunately. Yeah. We don't even have any homebrew shops around here anymore, which is crazy to me.
Zach's in Willamette.
Yes, that's the only one left.
Good old Zach.
Zach, so one of my assistant brewer here, he's a full brewer now, but started as an assistant brewer with me, and he lives out that way, so he's been to there before.
Oh, yeah.
I've never actually been because that's way out of my way, but
right.
I've been previously to Phantom obviously was a brewer supply place first before they opened their brewery side, and then I started, like I said, having that class with that over at Brew and Wine Hobby, and it was literally just a kind of a thing that me and some of the guys from the gym got together and were like, oh, let's go do this homebrew class, and one of the guys I trained actually at the time set it all up. So all this time I was trying to be the good influence on them, and they were simultaneously trying to be a bad influence on me, and clearly they won out, which is good, but worked out for me. anyway, so started home brewing. We were partnered up with that same friend that I was brewing with, and we were doing homebrew festivals as Blurred Lines Brewing, and kind of doing all the events and pouring and things, mainly because I was just brewing almost every weekend at that point, because I very quickly went down that rabbit hole.
Oh, wow.
And loved the process. I'm a very product and process driven kind of guy to begin with.
Okay.
Which again, when I was in the gym industry, it was all about, designing programs for, specific, things. People wanted to lose weight or train for an obstacle course race. And that part of the business was really appealing to me because, designing the processes, teaching the people, what to do and guiding people was very fulfilling for me. Then when I opened my own business, you had to put all the other hats on. Running the business and all the other stuff is what ultimately just kind of like burnt me out in that thing. So
unfortunate.
That kind of was around the time where we started doing this homebrew thing, and we were doing these events, and I kind of got that spark back in this kind of thing. And so coming out of it, and there was all kinds of financial and just the business side of things that we were struggling with at the time. And so I was like looking for kind of a transition, and went back to work for my mother owned a company. She actually did private investigations, which I had kind of done on and off throughout my college years. And so I kind of went back into doing that, and really just, homebrewing. And then I saw online that Tyler down at Black Hog Brewing was offering an internship, essentially. So
nice.
It was a couple days a week, go down there and, basically just learn. And they needed help on their canning line. And so they were looking for somebody. And it was a great learning experience. Learned a lot from those guys. And then when that finished up, it was I live over in West Hartford, so it was a little bit of a trek for me to get down there. So I kind of went back to just, kind of bombing around doing, working part-time for my mom, and actually was doing rideshare at the time, so doing some Ubers and stuff just to fill in the gaps. And I happened to pick someone up in Hartford one morning and at around 9 o'clock and dropped them off at Thomas Hooker Brewing.
Oh, wow.
And I'm like, you're probably not here to drink this early in the morning. And he's like, no. And I happened to had printed out a resumes that I had in my glove box. So I passed it to Q, and I was like, hey, you mind passing this along to whoever's in there? And sure enough, I got a call back from Lisa and started working at Hooker for a while.
Wow.
So
great brewery.
It was a good time. Another great learning experience. Again, started on the packaging line, but learned everything about canning, was running the canning line, at one point. And then, moved into the cellaring side of things and learning that whole process. And for me, it was, home brewing was cool with the recipe development, but I knew if I was going to do anything in this industry, it's not just about your recipes. It's about knowing, how to use this commercial style equipment.
Right.
And so I, again, all this time, it was part-time work. And we were still brewing as home brewers, me and my buddy. And we had, talked about, okay, we're going to open a place eventually. Like everyone, I think home brewing.
Let's open a brewery.
Right, exactly. It sounds great on paper. And we got pretty far into it. But when we started to get, again, obviously I was putting a lot of the legwork in the learning the processes and all that kind of stuff. And he was going to be that side of the business that I didn't want to have anything to do with all the business stuff. And then when we got pretty close and ended up falling through and kind of got cold feet. And so anyway, I was kind of left with all this experience that I'd been accumulating, all these recipes and
what
a passion,
shame, right?
A passion for the industry, and going, okay, what do I do now? And then this opportunity kind of popped up. I was going on, there's a probrewer.com has a jobs board essentially. So I had been going on every week, and anything that popped up in the area, I was sending a resume out to and going on interviews and doing things. And some places were too far away, like Great Falls. I interviewed with those guys long before Jonas got there, and it just ended up being too far to go, And Athletic Brewing actually was another one that I went and met those guys. Super great guys, but they were all the way down to Stratford, which was an hour drive for me. Although looking back now, they getting in as one of the in that company probably would have worked out pretty well as well.
Would have been,
yeah. They've done amazing things.
Yep.
But then this popped up, and it was a brew pub in Manchester, and I knew nothing about it. So I was like, all right, let me come out and did the interview, and obviously it worked out pretty well.
Yeah. Now, this is the old Adams Mill restaurant.
Correct.
I remember eating here, back in the 80s, I believe.
Yeah. Oh, yeah. I think everybody did at one point.
Yeah. It was great food, Yeah. So converting this into a brewery, were you here for that part?
Yeah, so I came on board. They had already started to build out. They basically were gutting everything out at the time. Yeah, it's drastically different than what it used to be. I believe the main taproom area was their event space where they did. Basically, I've heard from everyone who comes in around here that they've done a wedding reception, a class reunion, someone's bar mitzvah. There's everyone in the area has been here for some big event. But they were gutting that all out. They cleared everything out. And then I came on board early on in that process in terms of setting up the brew space. They had already worked with a designer, had pretty much laid everything out. And then the equipment was actually purchased. It used to be Parable Brewing in Manchester here. So back in the day, there was Top Shelf Brewing, which is over in that where Second Bridge is now, not in the same space, but across the way. Right. And they moved across town and opened up as Parable Brewing and had a 7-barrel system there. And that folded up pretty close to when they were starting to plan this out as a brew space. So they actually bought all that equipment used and then set it all up, obviously trucked it over here and rigged it in. So I came on in that process where everything was pretty much out in the tap room. All the equipment was just kind of set up there at the time.
So you were here for the setup. How long ago was that?
So that was in September of 2019 is when I officially came on board. Build-out was going on, and then we got open in November of that year. They had already had most of the build-out started. At that point, we were just setting up the whole brew space. And then from there, it was getting tight because they wanted to get everything plumbed in, obviously, and that whole process took some extra time, and it pushed up against when we were supposed to be opening pretty closely. So essentially what it meant is we only have 4 7-barrel tanks and 1 15 at the time, and that was nowhere near one turn of that was not going to be enough for a place this big. So it ended up being where I was scrambling going, what am I going to do? We're going to be out of beer really quickly. And I knew Rich from the Brew and Wine Hobby, who was one of the original founders of Firefly. Okay. So I was in there, kind of lamenting with that over the fact that, how am I going to make more beer to get open? Right. And Rich was there, and I was like, do you know anybody that we can contract with? And he said they had just done some expanding at Firefly. He's like, well, let me put you in touch with Dana. And so I met up with Dana and Justin, and actually the first 2 batches of my recipe beers that were brewed for commercial production were brewed there.
Oh, no kidding.
Yeah, so we partnered with them, obviously, even before we opened. Yeah. So, and they had a canning line as well, which worked out great because then we could have cans, for people to have something to take away.
Right.
So I worked with those guys, and then obviously started brewing here as much as I could. But we found out really quickly after like the first week we were open, we were down to like only 2 beers on the line. And I was like, and it was those 2 that we brewed because they were 10-barrel batches. 20-barrel batches because we did double. We did 2 10s over there. So I called Dana right back up and I was like, hey, we're going to have to keep contracting with you guys quite a bit. So we were doing batches there a couple of months at least for the first few months we were open while I was still simultaneously trying to, turn tanks as quick as I could here. It was crazy.
You were busy.
Oh yeah, no, it was crazy. And then,
and that's back and forth to Firefly. Really?
Yeah.
Wow.
I live kind of midway between, so it wasn't too bad.
Okay.
And they were great. Once we got things dialed in, they were just doing the batches for me. On days where I was brewing here, I'd just call them up and say, hey, I need another 20-barrel batch of this thing that we had already brewed, and they would take care of it for me. So it was really helpful up front. And then we got into COVID, actually. So literally 4 months after we opened, we were shut down. So that put a big screeching halt to obviously all of the productions and everything. So, and then coming out of it kind of really changed the whole business model in terms of the brewing side of things. The volume was much lower, so keeping up with brewing enough beer wasn't a real problem until we really got back up to speed again. So it allowed me to get more variety of beers on, and that's where we really started, trying to get at least 8 to 10 of our own, house-made beers at the time, and then the rest we had guest taps. We had 50 draft lines here, so
50 draft lines.
We fill them up.
So now you're the head brewer. How did that come about? I mean, you said you came in here kind of almost like an intern, if you will, with just a limited amount of experience, and now you're the head brewer.
Well, I was the only brewer from day one, actually.
Wow.
So when I came on board, my first batch of commercial beer that I ever brewed, obviously aside from the 2 that we contract brewed, which essentially Justin did all the work there. My first batch here was my first commercial batch of beer I ever brewed.
Wow.
So it was exciting and terrifying all at the same time.
Okay.
Thankfully, they had brought on Matt Westfield as a consultant.
Okay.
Counterweight Matt. And he was amazing. He was a big help, and he actually came for the first brew day.
Oh, wow.
So he was here along with our director, and it was one of those okay, we got to make this work. And I had taken apart and put back put the whole system together and everything. So I was pretty comfortable with where everything went and the process and everything. And so, but it was still, again, it was kind of just jumping in the deep end and making it all work.
Right.
And so from literally, I was the only person here making the beer, kegging the beer, cellaring the beer. I was the entire brew department until long after COVID, when we hired Zach, who's been hugely helpful.
Okay. Because, I mean, this place is always packed.
Yeah.
And you guys go through a ton of beer. Oh, yeah. And wow, dude.
Yeah, no, we went through, so the opening week was in November, and the 19th, and one of the next weekends was Thanksgiving, which if anyone in the beer or the bar or restaurant business knows, that Wednesday before Thanksgiving is the literal biggest night of the year.
Yeah.
And I had a 15-barrel batch of the first 15-barrel turn that we had on that, which was the double batch. And I had hoped that was going to be a few weeks worth of beer, and so I kegged up half of it going into that weekend, and basically was like, okay, I'll keg up the rest next week, and we'll go from there. I came back, I think it was Friday morning, and all that I had kegged was gone.
Oh no!
And I was like, what happened? Did somebody pour it down the drain? And they're like, we sold it all. And I scrambled to transfer the rest, carb it up, and get it packaged. But that 15-barrel batch lasted me a week. And again, at the time, we only had 6 of our own beers on, which again, we didn't have a lot of ramp-up time, so I didn't have a lot of production in tanks yet. And so we leaned for the first year, we leaned pretty heavily on our guest taps, bringing in beer from everywhere, which was also cool because I'm a beer geek too. So I love the fact that instead of having to run around to all these breweries that I didn't have time to go to anymore, we would just bring stuff in and I just put it on tap and try it out.
It's funny because I remember coming here. This is before I even started the blurb. I came here with my wife and we had a beer called Sticky Monkey.
Yes.
And that was delicious.
That's great.
It was amazing.
Yeah, that's a Firestone Walker.
And we haven't seen it since.
So Firestone Walker actually is out of distribution now, unfortunately. That beer was one of my favorite beers back homebrewing. Actually, my buddy and I, when we were homebrewing, tried to do a version of that. So that's basically they call it a West Coast quad. It's kind of a hybrid between a stout and a Belgian. Yeah. So we essentially brewed a stout grain bill. We fermented it with a Belgian yeast, and then we put coconut into it, which we called it our pirate monkey. Yeah. And actually, it ended up being one of those ones that it was a crowd favorite when we were doing homebrew festivals. Right.
Cool.
And it's a recipe I never quite got to do here yet, but pretty soon we're going to have. So we opened in Fairfield, and we have a 10-barrel batch system down there. So most of the production on our IPAs and our bigger beers, lagers and stuff like that, we shifted down there. Pretty soon we're going to be opening. We've already broken ground and are building out in Danbury. Oh, wow. So that'll be a third location. There, we're only going to do about a 3-barrel system, which means all these weird recipes, these kind of crazy little ideas that I've had all this time that just haven't had tank space or want to really swing for the fences on a full 7-barrel batch, we can start doing really cool stuff down there. So I'm looking forward to resurrecting some of those old, homebrew kind of quirky recipes. Again, we called ourselves Blurred Lines Brewing because we like just hybriding beers and doing all kinds of weird stuff.
That sounds good to me, though.
Yeah, I mean, it was a lot of fun, and I'm looking forward to getting back to some of that.
Cool. Now, you brought up Firefly, and of course, I know Dana, and he's such a good guy, you know. And right now he's brewing coffee.
Yes.
Yeah, he's doing the roasting of coffee beans.
He's been doing an amazing job. As a matter of fact, I have a coffee porter that I partnered with him on right now.
There you go.
Later on.
Nice. But of course, when Firefly closed, I was upset because it was a special spot for me. And, you know, we see that going on. Now, you have a neighbor right here in town, Labyrinth Brewing, that is closing its doors this coming Sunday from the time of this recording. What does that make you feel like inside? And I'm not talking about Labyrinth itself. Knowing that type of situation, breweries are closing. You guys are expanding, but breweries are closing. And there's rumor of many others here in Connecticut that are going to be closing soon, too. What does that make you, as the head brewer of Elicit, feel like?
Yeah, it's really tough because, again, before I got into brewing actual beer, I've literally at this point been to every brewery in Connecticut personally. Mm-hmm. I just loved going to breweries. I loved the culture of it. You know, coming out of the industry that I was in, it was, you know, a very tight-knit group of people that you get, you know, that you get to be with. And the beer culture in Connecticut is really the same from what I've seen, and even better. Mm-hmm. So the homebrew community was so much fun. It was everybody knew everybody. We do festivals. Then when I got into commercial brewing, I didn't know a lot of people on that side. And, you know, as I got to know people, it was just like the homebrew scene. You know, you know everybody. Yeah. And, you know, it was always really cool to be in Manchester here, where we had literally 4 craft breweries in town. Yeah. And, you know, to see one of them going, it hits you. You know, it's tough. You know, when Dana closed down, it was a surprise to me. And he called me up one day. He's like, "Hey, I've got some empty kegs of yours here. You want to come and pick them up?" And I was like, "No, hold on to them." I'm like, "We're going to need to do another batch in a couple weeks." And he's like, "Yeah, about that." Oh. And I was like, "Oh," it was a gut punch because, like, again, like you said, these guys were my heroes. Yeah. As I was coming up as a home brewer, I loved all, you know, doing all those events and getting to meet some of these people that I looked up to was really cool. And Labyrinth, I was there when they opened.
Yeah, same here. That weekend.
Every brewery that opens up in Connecticut, I still try to, but I get there opening week because I just love to see what people are doing, this whole community.
Absolutely. And show support, obviously.
Of course.
You know, it's a community.
It is.
You know?
And I hate, you know, people talk about it, saturation in markets and all that stuff. It's, for me, I don't look at it that way. I look at it like the more people making cool beer in the area is going to push us all to, you know, to do better. Mm-hmm. I remember distinctly, I had made a orange creamsicle sour beer here, and you know, the first batch came out pretty good, and then I remember, like, I think Labyrinth had released one around the same time, and I went over there and I had a glass and I was like, damn it, they did it better.
Sean's a good brewer, though.
Yeah, and actually I think Adam might have been there, and I was just like, man, you guys knocked this out of the park. Yes. And we had a little rocky relationship with those guys at the beginning, you know, coming into town, obviously, you know, being a bigger place, we're owned by a restaurant group. Mm-hmm. So it was a kind of a different animal, and I think, you know, I didn't know anybody at the time, and so I didn't reach out to invite a bunch of people in because I just didn't. Right. I didn't know anybody, and plus I was deer in headlights at the moment. I was in back trying to figure out how I'm going to make beer to serve this giant place, and so I kind of missed that opportunity and didn't get off on a great foot with you know, with some of the local guys. But I tried to go out of my way to walk around and meet people afterwards and really kind of get to know everybody and. Again, it was one of those things where it's like, you know, you develop relationships with people and in the industry, and everybody's a big community here. So whenever anybody, you know, falls off, it's always a tough thing.
Very good. Yeah, I totally agree with you. So you have in front of us a flight of beers.
I do. And
we got to get to that because
exactly,
my mouth is dry.
All this talking does that, right?
Right. So why don't you tell us what we have here? And
So you told me you would like the IPAs. So we got a little IPA flight here.
Right.
So starting at the paddle handle, I went light first. That's our session IPA. That one was first brewed when we opened our patio. So after COVID, we didn't have that beautiful outdoor patio, which we'll go take a little tour of later. It's a great space, but unfortunately that wasn't here pre-COVID. It would have been really helpful coming out of COVID. Because we ended up having to put tables in the parking lot for outdoor seating when we got to that point. But anyway, when we first opened up the patio, we did a patio beer, essentially. So we call this one Drink Outdoors, or Drink This Outdoors.
That's what this first one is?
Yeah. So it's a little bit, it's somewhat hazy, but it's brewed with the California ale yeast. So it's more old school in that sense. But Simcoe, Citra, and Amarillo.
Okay.
So you get that kind of dank citrusy notes to it.
Take a taste.
Yeah, so
it's light.
Yes, yeah, that was my target for this one. With a session IPA, I wanted it to be approachable. I want it to be like just a crusher, like something. It's got a nice citrus. It's got some maltiness to it, but it's not overbearing.
This is I can understand why you call it a patio beer.
Yeah.
That's very light and refreshing. Nothing's overtaking anything else. It's balanced. It's just very light flavor and aroma, but actually the aroma is a little bit more stronger than I think than the actual taste.
Absolutely. Yeah, so this is one of those ones, where here we obviously was brewing all of our beer here at first, other than what was being done at Firefly. And the water here in Manchester is really hard. So that kind of gave me some struggles in some of these hoppier beers in terms of getting the flavors I wanted out of it. Now that we have Fairfield, which is much softer water, I've shifted production of the IPAs down there for the most part. Yeah, so all these ones that we're trying today, all these IPAs were actually brewed down there.
Okay, I'm fine with that. So what's the next one on the board?
The next one is actually a recipe from Zach's, our other brewer here.
Okay.
This was, we call it Devilware Strata. So it's primarily a Strata hop beer. A little bit of Chinook in there as well, just to kind of give you that little bit of a balanced bite to it.
Yeah.
But the Strata really brings kind of I want to say almost like a strawberry note to it, which is actually a very cool hop that we started using.
Nice. Yeah. Well, let's give this one a taste. So it hit the side of my tongue with the dank, but down the middle it's sweet.
Yeah. Yeah, you get those kind of berry notes, which kind of lean strawberries. If you close your eyes and think of eating kind of an underripe strawberry, that's generally where Strata falls, at least for me and in what I've experienced from it. So it's been a really kind of a cool hop to play with to get those kind of something a little bit different than the traditional, like just Citra or dank, notes.
Yeah, Citric Galaxy Mosaic.
Right, exactly.
Yeah, that's tasty though. Yeah, so to Adam.
Cheers. Yeah.
And next on the board?
So next on the board is our Random Feelings. Random Feelings is a primarily Sabro and Cashmere.
Ooh, Cashmere.
I like Cashmere. Cashmere and Eldorado for me are those hops that kind of smooth and round out other things. So a lot of the traditional, like your Citras, your Mosaics, there's some spikierness to some of them, and Eldorado especially kind of almost tastes like it puts a candy coating on some of those things.
Yeah.
And Cashmere to me is another one of those hops where it kind of softens the overall hop presence, and it adds kind of a cool tropicalness to it on the other side.
All right, well, here we go. Okay. I'm catching rind of some sort.
Yeah, melon rind.
Is that melon rind? Okay.
Yeah. Yep. So that's another thing that Cashmere I think brings to the table. You get that kind of almost like a green melon or a melon rind kind of tropical, kind of stanky fruit taste to it. Yeah. And I like that tropical stanky kind of fruit notes that it brings, which pairs really well with the Sabro, which can go from coconut to sometimes a little kind of green. But again, this is another one of those beers that brewing it down in Fairfield with that water profile has completely changed this beer and allowed it to blossom a little bit more into some of the more tropical notes.
Cool.
Yeah.
Okay. And last but certainly not least.
Sure. This is our total juice bag. This one is a great one. You talked about Citra, Mosaic, and Galaxy and all that stuff. Well, we threw them all into this one. So
okay. Yep.
This is the first one where we were brewing some of these beers, and when I first started, I tried to avoid a lot of those, bigger hops. Mainly because everyone else was using them, but also because we didn't have any hop contracts, and I was worried about if I can get a hold of them or not. So I kind of shifted a lot of our early beers to not use those hops. And then we finally got to that point where I was like, all right, we're doing pretty well. Let's throw all the sexy hops into one beer. So this one has Nelson, it has Citra, Mosaic, and Galaxy all in it.
Wow.
Yeah.
All right. And the ABV on this?
6.5.
6.5. That's respectable. Wow. Well, that's really interesting because the last one I said, the dank hit me in the side, and it was sweet down the middle. Give me a second here. Oh, it's almost the opposite.
It's cool, right? It's interesting, right. So the Galaxy is really the big second dry hop. So the last big charge of dry hop that we use is the Galaxy, which really kind of punches that kind of, it's got a very unique character Galaxy does. And I think that kind of green, I don't want to say herbal, but a little bit more, I guess, dankiness of that hop kind of comes through on that one, I think.
Yeah, they are all excellent. They're very good. Okay, so we're going to do a little tour of the place. And you're going to show me around the brewery area, correct?
Yeah, absolutely.
Okay, and I'm really interested in seeing those lines because the way you described it to me earlier off, Mike, it sounds pretty complicated.
No, it's pretty crazy, yeah.
And we have the new patio, and it looks like there's people out there working on it right now.
Yeah, so those are our contractor guys. We have TVs out there, and he's just putting in some coverings for them.
Oh, cool.
So he's doing a few things, but...
making it all better.
Yeah.
All right. So, and if you want to catch that portion of this interview, you're going to have to turn to my social media platforms, and I'll be posting about that tour. All right. I thank you so much for allowing us to come in here and talk with you. I really appreciate your time because I know your time is precious. You're a busy guy, especially with a place this big. And just keep making that beer, brother. I appreciate it. Yeah. Brian, thank you much, bro.
Thanks for coming out. Next time you'll have to come out to our Fairfield location. If you think this is big, that place is even bigger. So, yeah, we actually have 100 draft lines down there. So,
well, let's set that up.
We'll have to make a trip.
All right, Buzz and Buzz Beer Blurb, and we'll be tipping one back for you.
And now, Buzz Beer Blurb presents Hops 101. On this episode, we'd like to introduce you to KRUSH. KRUSH hops, previously known as HBC 586, is a bright and bold hop with big flavors of stone fruit, citrus, berries, and boasts an alpha acid range of 10.1 to 14.1%. KRUSH is perfectly suited for fruit-forward IPAs and plays well with the usual suspects of Citra, Mosaic, and Galaxy. The intensity of flavor, versatility, and uniqueness are particularly singular to KRUSH and makes it an excellent addition to any recipe. Sounds like any beer made with these hops will be completely crushable. Hey, somebody had to say it. KRUSH is a trademark of the Hop Breeding Company, LLC. Okay, we're back. So, I know that this is a little bit longer episode than usual, but I needed to get these interviews in. I need to get Brian in because he's just such a nice guy. I couldn't keep him waiting any longer. And, of course, now we have Adam and Sean from Labyrinth, and this one had to be heard because of how important it is. So, without any further ado, here is our interview with Adam and Sean of Labyrinth Brewing.
Okay, well, on the show today, we have Adam Delaura, we have Sean Guerra, and you tell us their story. Now, if you pay attention to anything that I do on this show, you know that I really miss Labyrinth, and the closing of Labyrinth was a big deal to us and to many, many people in the community. So when Labyrinth closed, it affected us. And I got to say, I'm honored, gentlemen, that you came here to tell us the story, to give us this exclusive podcast interview. And I want to welcome you. So, guys, welcome to the show again.
Yeah,
thanks for having us.
Yeah, thanks for having us. Man. You know, it's an honor to be on your show.
I appreciate that.
I don't know if honored is the correct word here, but we'll go with it.
I'm trying to be polite.
Alrighty. So let's just get right into it. I just want to let you tell your story. What happened?
Oh, wow. That's a good question. You know, I guess from the 10,000 foot overview, pretty much what we have been saying, whether that's on Facebook or any of the other media outlets, it just comes down to numbers.
Okay.
Right. And that is just part of business, right? It costs X amount of money to operate. We're bringing in Y amount of money. And if Y is less than X, that means you don't have enough money. And there's a variety of factors that are influencing that. But at the end of the day, we just made the decision that, grinding 100 hours a week and trying to do this and that and whatever just wasn't working for us, wasn't working for the business. And, we didn't want to put out a subpar product or have a crappy experience in the tap room. So it was just kind of like, all right, well, we don't want to compromise our values and what we're trying to do. And this is a huge challenge and we are going to close. Certainly way more complicated than that, but that's kind of like, the elevator pitch for how that happened, and yeah.
So you did a lot of work at last 2 years, possibly 3. The deck was the first big project, correct?
Yeah, I mean, a lot of those things were happening concurrently, but I think the deck was one of the first things to come. As we sort of during the pandemic, we pivoted our business model. Originally, we were taproom only, and we're like, we're not really going to distribute.
Right.
Well, that went out the window.
Right.
Obviously, the world changes, consumer demand changes, the economy changes. We're like, all right, we're going to start distributing. So we did that outdoor seating, our covered deck, which is killer and was a great amenity.
Right.
We expanded brew house production. We increased our distribution. All those things were part of sort of like an effort to kind of pivot the business and say, okay, well, when we got into business, we were taproom only, small, whatever. And now the world's different. Let's change and try to draw in all those other customers and get basically just how do we get our beer into more humans' hands?
Right.
And that's through wholesale and, having more amenities in the tasting room and more events. And, we added a kitchen eventually and all that jazz. So it's just constantly trying to evolve.
Right.
And, unfortunately, that just was not enough.
We were recently at Counterweight, and we were looking for Ritual Pizza, and I don't know if they opened up yet at that location, but I'm hoping that they still have great success.
Yeah, I don't think they're open yet, and it's not my place to speak for them. But I think that they are moving full steam ahead from what I've heard. So, I mean, I hope sooner rather than later because
their pizza sells itself though.
Oh God, I would definitely take another one.
Oh yeah,
yeah. My waistline wasn't doing so well when you have pizza every day, but whatever,
Yeah, that's called happy weight, though, right?
Exactly. Yes.
Okay, so I mean, I'm out in the beer community a lot. Obviously, this is what I do, and people talk, obviously, and there's people are wondering, why you closed. Everyone who I talk to, they become really sad. Basically, the only way I can describe it, when the conversation of Adam and John and Labyrinth come up. But people are saying, they think that maybe you overextended yourself. Is that the storyline?
I wouldn't say it's an overextension. I mean, I don't want to speak for you or anything, but I don't think it was an overextension. I think it was just not enough capacity to, it's tough trying to make enough beer and make enough of a margin to pay for the extra overhead to make all that extra beer. If that makes any sense, right? I hire a brewer so I can perform, so I can brew more beer. That person costs more money. So now I have have more costs associated with bringing that brewer on. Therefore, I need to sell more beer. Therefore, so it's sort of it's an interesting feedback loop where it's like, okay, well, we want to grow a little bit so that we can bring in more revenue, but then there's cost associated with that. And again, it really just comes back down to the numbers. We're a brew house of a certain size. We have, the infrastructure that we have, and that's not magically changing anytime soon. And, you have to remember, we initially set ourselves up to be a taproom only model.
Right.
So trying to kind of like jam that into another business model is difficult,
Right.
to say the least. So
Yeah, I mean, a lot of it, it comes down to certain factors too. When we first opened up, none of us came along with a lot of money.
Yeah.
Actually, really none. So, when that's the case, to open up a business like that, you have to borrow money.
Yeah.
And then they want you to pay that back.
No.
it's wild. It's crazy, yeah.
And it wasn't a terrible thing, but as, COVID happened and taproom business never recovered and really hasn't, service industry in general just hasn't recovered for anyone.
Yeah.
Those numbers didn't work. So what do? You either walk away or you throw more money into it and change your business model,
Right.
Which we did. And we were very successful on the wholesale distribution side of things, increasing that. But again, that's at a much lower margin and more work. And it was really, predicated that at some point, one of these years, when they say things are going to get better, things actually get better.
Yeah.
But you couple in inflation and, $2,000 electric bills, now $4,000 a month. All this, and, small business loans have a variable, they're a rate plus prime.
Right.
So as that rises, now those loans are increased. And, just pretty much look at every bill down the line, those increase. But, that high margin taproom business that you were doing pre-COVID never really came back. And that's what the original business model really relied on.
Right.
So.
Well, I mean, COVID really, it took a bite out of so many businesses. And yeah, there's a lot of breweries that are still trying to recover from it.
Oh, sure.
I heard that you were helping out another brewery.
Yeah. There's Broken Cemetery down in Bethel. I'm just there a few days a week for a short period of time, just helping out while they were sort of in a pickle.
Okay.
And like I said, I told them, I went out of business for you.
There's always a silver lining.
So I've been driving down there a few days a week, helping out.
Nice.
They're great people. They have a great facility. Great beer, food, everything. If you're ever in the area or looking to make a trek to a different part of the state, they're a great place to stop.
Absolutely.
Yeah, it's a cute little downtown area, so it's like a perfect sort of like date afternoon. So check out some little shops, do some hiking, whatever, grab a beer and some food.
Beautiful. Yeah.
100% recommend
Sounds like
it.
a nice area.
Yeah. So.
Okay. So that's very good of you, though, to go down there and lend your skills like that. Makes me even more interested in their beer, actually. But I always say this. I've repeated this time and time again. I've only given 2 beers 5.
Yeah.
And of course, yours was one of them. And the other one went to East Hartford to Joe, and I bumped into Joe. So hopefully I might be able to build a relationship with him. But in terms of making beer and good beer in the state, this is a tragedy to me.
Yeah, that's one word to describe it.
Yeah, I mean,
we appreciate that.
Yeah,
So,
that's mostly his fault.
Well, for making such good beer.
Yeah.
Damn
that's
you,
his problem.
damn you, Sean.
Yeah.
I know.
I know. I told him not to, but here we are.
So what happens next? I mean, right now there's an auction going on for all the brewing equipment and things that are inside the brewery. Do you know any of the details of that?
Of the auction itself,
Yeah,
or
I mean,
essentially the equipment's up for auction. So I don't know when this podcast will be released, but it's entirely possible that it will be over by the time this is released. So if you didn't jump on it before, you're out of luck. But again, that's just the auction itself is just part of the life cycle of a business. It's closing down. We're auctioning this stuff off. We've got a few administrative things to button things up to sort of like dissolve the business, and then if we were to do nothing else, that would be it.
Right.
That's just like, cool, chapter has closed, and moving on to whatever is next in life.
Right. I also ran into Amanda the other day, your former general manager.
Oh,
yeah.
nice.
Awesome.
Yeah.
Oh, was that back east?
Yes, it was
Yeah.
back
Oh,
east.
nice.
Yeah.
Okay.
So, we saw each other saying, hey, and she walked up and it's like, what's going on? I'm like, well, we're just talking about Labyrinth because I was talking to Tony about it. And of course, as soon as the topic came up, Tony was like, yeah, it's making a lot of other breweries nervous that you guys closed. Try It Taproom is gone. Cambridge Brewing is gone. There's other ones that are rumored to be on the chopping block.
Sure.
Can you give those breweries any word of encouragement? I know that's a hard one.
Yeah, that's a real tough one to do.
Take a moment.
Yeah.
It's a tough one to do, in all honesty. And I mean, that's not just breweries, it's restaurants. It's anything that has to do with expendable income is struggling at this moment.
Right.
So it's, you go out to eat and your chicken parmesan is $8,000.
Yeah.
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 And you're paying $15 for a well bourbon.
Yeah. Yeah. I mean,
but it's even that.
Yeah.
Yeah. The increase in prices to be out there doesn't even cover the increase in costs that places are,
Right.
because there's only so much you can put that on the consumers before they don't show up at all.
Yeah. I mean, we certainly weren't going to charge $10 for a pint of Turbo Love Juice at the brewery. Like, who the heck would come? I mean, it's a great beer.
My hand went up.
But I have a feeling we would have sold far fewer Turbo Love Juices at $10 a pint. So it's not a matter of that. But I will say, I don't know if this is I guess breweries are unique entities.
Yes.
Much like we're all unique human beings. So every brewery is in a different neighborhood. They're positioned differently. They have different point of view on how they're operating. And I guess it's just a matter of being flexible and just trying to provide, have a good experience, make good beer, and, try to do that in a way that you can still make a couple bucks. Right. I know that's sort of like so generic, that could be on a motivational poster, but like you really just gotta sort of like what we did, try the best you can, but also know when it's time to throw in the towel.
Right.
Because grinding 100 hours a week for another 6 months wasn't going to make or break it. So why not take this time to sort of pause and reevaluate things, rather than just being completely miserable, because what would the impact of that be on the taproom experience, the quality of the beer, the morale of the staff, our relationships with our customers and all that stuff. I guess it's just a matter of understanding where you are and how you fit in with all that. And honestly, not everything lasts forever, but hopefully all those other places out there find some way to weather the storm.
Right. And they got to know their demographics too.
Sure.
I mean, there's certain breweries that I hear they say, well, we got an older crowd, and so they focus on Facebook. Or, we have a lot of millennials, so they focus on Instagram, that kind of thing. TikTok doesn't seem to be a brewery thing that much to me. But understanding your demographics and flowing with the crowd that comes through your brewery is what you really need to be doing. And I guess that's my word to the breweries that are out there, from what I've been seeing and hearing and talking about.
Yeah.
You two, future plans? Anything that you're scoping out? Any desires? I mean, what are you doing?
And well, I'm going to start playing a hell of a lot more Dungeons and Dragons now that I have some more time. So, I mean, other than that, obviously I need a job, right?
Yeah.
Like, I don't have Batman wealth that just hang out and fight crime. So,
great.
Wait a minute. I've never seen you and Batman in the same room together, though.
Well,
okay.
I just outed myself. So there's sort of that, but I think, at least for me personally, I'm taking this time to kind of just like come down and decompress from the stress of owning a business and trying to manage all the staff, all that jazz that you have to do as a business owner, like all your paperwork and keep things running. And, for the last, oh my God, we're going out of business. How do we stop this? That is like mega stressful,
God, yeah.
And, once we're done buttoning up the closing of this place, I'm just going to take a little bit of time, a couple of weeks, just sort of
hop on the bike and go. Right?
Yeah, breathe, figure it out. And then I have to find something else, if that makes sense.
Yeah,
Maybe
of course
that'll
it
be in
does.
the beer world, maybe not, but it
Right.
has to pay the bills because at the end of the day, I need food, clothing, and shelter.
Right.
So,
John?
I mean, pretty similar. I haven't done as much decompressing as I'd like to, but that just sort of comes with who I am.
It's still
as a
happening,
human
too.
being. So OnlyFans, grifting.
Yeah. Yep.
You got that link?
Yeah.
I'll take two.
That's where we're going. But
This is why I love you guys.
Yeah.
it's similar thing. I'd like to continue brewing, but does that involve the industry? Who knows? Bare minimum, I'm home brewing again for my house next year and brewing whatever I want, whenever I want, and that kind of jazz. And just because I do love it, and the business aspect really. I mean, opening a business, or you should, that it's going to get in the way of that. You're like, well, I really love doing this, but the stress of all this is really sort of, I guess putting a damper on that to be light, but
yeah, it's in the forefront of your mind, so it's taking up everything. That's more than understandable.
Yeah.
Let's squash one other rumor,
Okay.
and it fits into the whole topic of what's in the future.
Sure.
There's a lot of people saying that they heard you're going to try and keep things going somehow. Maybe brewing out of 12% or, Thomas Hooker.
Is that a possibility? I mean, anything's a possibility. I would say right now we're focused on closing everything down, and then we're going to take a little time to think about what the landscape looks like and how we might do something, and if we actually want to do it. Is it feasible? Is it logistically possible? Do we have the time? Do we want to deal with the stress of something like that? You know what I'm saying? So, that's one of the good things about having this experience already. I mean, even though that the business closed, is that we've got that 6 years of experience operating the business and knowing the industry and all that stuff, and also the maybe year and a half of construction and building and going through the permitting process and all that stuff. So now we have all that experience. If we were to do something in the future, we're better positioned to probably be more successful at it, if that makes, nothing's a sure bet, right?
Yeah, experience.
But right now, do we have a business plan and ready to go and start cranking out some turbo love juice out of whatever? No. You know what I'm saying? There's just so much going on right now.
Yeah, I mean, we've got normal bills to pay, and and
Life bills,
when you're close to going out of business or realizing you're going down that path, possibly you stop paying yourself too. So you go through a long stretch of time where this is especially if you need to make an income from that business versus having outside income, which neither of us did. That's that sort of added stress, and now it's normal job, benefits, all that kind of jazz.
Right.
Settle down into something that is stable, and then think with, I guess, a clearer head if there's anything industry-wise that you want to do.
Right.
But right now it's wrapping that up. And
because people don't look at the fact that it's not just Labyrinth that was affected. It's not just your customers are affected. Going through this, your families must have been affected.
Oh, absolutely, yeah. The staff and their families and us. It's just like Sean said, how long can you go without making any money?
Right.
Right?
Right.
There's mortgage to pay, taxes to pay, car payments to pay. If you have no money coming in, it's just you have that double-sided stress for the business is going up in flames and it's a dumpster fire, but personal finances are a dumpster fire. That's impacts all the other humans in your household,
right?
And your family, who's just oh, when is this guy ever going to make money?
Right.
Never. You know what I mean? So again, there is that sort of thing where it's okay, we did that for so long. Let's get something stable that covers the basics, and then we can more thoughtfully consider if we want to take this somewhere.
Right.
And maybe the answer is yes, and it's wonderful, and maybe the answer is no. And we're what, we did that, and we're proud of what we did and what we accomplished, and cool.
Right.
close that chapter and go do something else, you know?
But, I mean, you two own the brand, correct? Labyrinth.
I mean, we are Labyrinth.
You
Yeah,
are
I mean,
Labyrinth.
yeah.
Yes.
Yeah.
So I mean, and I don't know, maybe I'm trying to be wishful thinking, but I mean, you could go to another brewery and do some contract brewing
Sure,
through that and have the distro going on. At
Yeah,
least.
I mean, I guess
I
it's
mean, wouldn't that be
possible.
like a passive income almost?
You know, it depends on the logistics as far as like, would that make any money? Is that worthwhile?
Right.
Right. What's the value? You don't really make a lot of money wholesale. Like, you know, is that worth the time and effort? Again, it kind of goes back to like, all right, we settle into real jobs. Is that worth the time and effort to manage and maintain that? Because it wouldn't just be like, oh, I just send this recipe over to whomever and, you know, Hooker starts cranking out my beers and magically I get a big fat check. You know what I'm saying?
You
Like,
still have to manage your brand.
yeah, so like,
So.
do we want to put the time and effort into that? I can tell you that, like, when I told my wife that we had made the decision to close.
Right.
For like 15 seconds, she was like, oh, I'm sorry. And then she was like, I'm going to get my husband back. Right. So you have to kind of balance that. Like, what is the time and effort and stress level worth versus, you know, continuing the brand and the money and whatever. And is that equation, does that work?
Right.
And right now, personally, I'm not in a position to make that decision. Like, I want to take some time, chill, and think about it.
Right. Process.
And just be like, okay, well, now what do I want to do?
Right.
Right.
When I grow up, right?
Yeah.
Yeah.
I mean, you don't want to make a
happen.
decision in a hasty fashion when you're been under this much stress for so long. And,
Yeah.
you know, it's just, let's just close this first.
Right.
Yeah.
You know, and we can think about that later.
Are you feeling any relief? I know you're still kind of going through the process, but is there any sense of relief so far? Not yet. Not yet. I can see it. Not yet.
I don't know. I don't know how to answer that question.
Right.
You know.
I mean, I miss the place. I miss the people.
Oh yeah.
You know, the customers, the staff, the beer. I miss the equipment. You know, the equipment itself. I like all of that. It's, you know, just the research of what I'm doing next or, you know, the idea of, you know, continuous improvement and back there and just everything, the community. But, you know, I don't miss not sleeping as much, not being able to pay bills.
Right. Yeah. Yeah.
The amount of hours that you're working for so long that in the back of your head, I think you kind of know where you're going, but you're still doing it.
Yeah.
And you're like, why?
Yeah.
Why?
Digging a deeper trench for yourself.
Yeah, but then, you know, when you walk out, you know, you have a great event, right? You walk out to the tap room, everyone's having a great time. You see your staff, and you're like, well,
yeah, this is why we're doing this.
Right.
yeah. I mean, we didn't go into this with illusions of grandeur, you know, like we're going to make tons of money and we're going to just, you know, there was never that aspect to it. It was, you know, we'd like to make a living, but we also want to be a community focused, you know, sort of place for everyone. You know, I think you like to say, come as you are, kind of, you know, and that was all part of the original business model for us. And, you know, I think we achieved that aspect.
Oh, hell yeah.
You know, there's a lot of things that I think we achieved. It's just the numbers weren't one of the things,
Right.
But yeah, just the stress aspect. I don't miss that at all. Right. I mean, I like to be really busy too, but there's a difference between just being really busy and just feeling like the world is just constantly kicking you in your nether region.
Yeah.
You know, like,
Well, as the lyrics go, the world is a vampire. You know?
yeah.
It's gonna
You know, but I'll tell you, we can really fix a lot of stuff now.
Oh my god, yeah. Yeah, if you have a broken air compressor, chiller, a machine we've never seen before, we'll figure it out.
Yeah. Your nitro generator's broken. We got you covered.
Yeah, we'll just climb right into that machine and figure it out.
Well, you must have been business owners,
yeah, seriously, yeah. Because when the repair guy costs thousands of dollars, but this guy costs no dollars,
right.
You're figuring it out on your own, bro.
Here comes an edit. Do you have any questions, dude?
Not really.
You sure?
I'm just kind of listening.
Yeah, it just felt bad because you're like, you know, you're not your normal self for some reason. Are you okay?
I'm always okay.
You know, when you were upstairs, we kind of like roughed him up a little bit.
Yeah.
We were
Oh,
like, Nick, we don't want to hear your questions.
Yeah,
You
no,
know?
he likes that though. He's like,
Oh,
you
good.
hit me some more, I won't ask any questions.
Harder, please.
All right. So I'm going to go for a close.
Okay.
All right. Gentlemen, I really appreciate you coming out here, taking the time to talk to us on the podcast. It is an honor. It really is. It's been an honor and a privilege also going to Labyrinth and having some of the best beer in the state of Connecticut. And like I said, I've said this many, many times. I was there the weekend you opened up because your brother invited me.
Mm-hmm.
Norm was someone who helped me out with financing this place, and it was great to have that invitation. And I fell in love with it. Of course, you were 15 minutes down the road from me, so, you know, people are like, oh, Labyrinth's your favorite. I was like, well, yeah, it's right there, and it's good beer. Hello.
Yeah, it wasn't too far from me. It's just a shame I only got there once.
Really? That was it?
Just that one time with you, yeah.
That's it. I'm done with this podcast.
You can still go sit on the patio out there. I mean, no one's bringing you a beer, but you just walk right up.
I'll start
You grab a sack lunch and a bottle, and
Yeah, put it on the stick and just kind of...
Yeah, there you go. Yeah.
Well,
No.
thank you again, and I wish you joy. I wish you peace. I wish you no stress, you know, because you deserve it, guys. You really do. And the community, the beer community, applauds you, and they mourn with you. Just so you know that. Everybody loved you guys. So
Well, that's why if he does homebrew, share.
oh, yeah. You know, there's no way you could drink all that. So.
we'll talk about that later.
Yeah, absolutely. No,
Are
no,
you challenging us?
Yeah, I appreciate you having us on the show. But, you know, one of the cool things about this experience is all the relationships that we made with people, including, you know, humans such as yourself. And I will say that if there is some plan in the future to continue the brand or whatnot, whatever that is, we'll make sure that you are the first humans to,
Wow.
you know,
Wow. Thank you, guys.
we'll give you that
Well,
exclusive.
now I'm honored.
Yeah, so you know, we just appreciate you opening up your place to
Yeah.
let us kind of talk, and this is good for like the decompression
Yeah.
aspect of this thing.
Yeah.
You know,
Therapy here.
yeah, yeah, that's right. Yeah, I'm gonna go lay on that
Break
couch
out the
back
couch,
there. Yeah,
All right,
no
guys.
job.
Best of luck to you.
Thank you. Appreciate it.
Well, that wraps up episode 11. I want to thank Adam Delaura, Sean Guerra, and Brian Ayers one more time for sharing their time with us. If you haven't already done so, please check out our social media platforms and give us a follow. Just search @Bud's Beer Blurb on any of the platforms and we'll pop right up. I thank you in advance for your support. I'm Bud Esty, and my co-host is Nick Briggs. We thank you for listening, and we'll catch you next time on Bud's Beer Blurb, the podcast.